My name is Amanda Harity, and this is my older adult oral video presentation. It is based off my narration interview with my mom as my interviewee as an older adult, and the annotated bibliographies that I did. While looking at all of the stages of Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, after talking to my interviewee, I decided to focus on stage 5, which is under adolescence, and it focuses on identity versus identity confusion. Some of the key parts to this particular stage, as a person is going through their adolescence, they are learning to question things around them. They're gaining experience through interactions with their peers, adults, their school, and also all of the social interactions of the outside world, taking that in. And there's a strong influence on an individual from all of these different experiences and questionings. So this is a fundamental stage when a person is trying to answer the general question of who am I, and really trying to learn themselves. And again, these experiences will shape their identity as they head into the next stage of life, looking at their young adulthood lifetime. So, as I mentioned, the stage 5 of development is really focused on identity versus identity confusion during the adolescent time. While I was working with my interviewee, we did focus a lot of the time on her adolescence for multiple reasons. One being through her memory of recollection. Her adolescent time is really when she has solid memory and shaping that turned her into the person that she is now. So as we looked away at that, a big part of her identity now is a sense of independence and being self-aware and having a lot of confidence. And so looking back onto her adolescent time, this really has a focus on she went to boarding school for high school and then went away for college just after that. So during the early stages of her development, starting around age 14, she went to a women's boarding school. So with that, she was away from parental control. She was able to make decisions on her own without the influence of her parents on her. And then when coming home over the summer, she would go to a girls' summer camp. So with that, she was also out of the house for the summer period. This cycle continued heading into her late teens when she went to a women's college, also away from home. So that just continued her streak of independence, and being in women's institutions really made her feel comfortable as a woman and feeling as though she could accomplish anything that she put her mind to with that. So that was another shape of her identity. Through these opportunities, she was also influenced by many positive adults and role models through the interactions with professors, faculty, and staff. And then she also had the opportunity to meet a lot of strong women and interact with them as well. Also, during her adolescence, she remembers with interactions with her parents, seeing instances of verbal abuse. And this would happen when her parents would come back from different social events and drinking was involved. So this would have a later influence on her interactions and views on marriage, and also so that came together with her identity as well. During this stage, she hit a few moments that were challenges and different aspects that were considered accomplishments as well. So some of the challenges included just being a woman during this time. Her adolescence was really during the 1960s, and at this point, while women were encouraged to go to school and get an education, there was still an expectation that after graduating from college that you would get married and have children and be a housewife, if you will, and take care of the kids at home. But this was also a stage of when women were starting to continue their education or start to go to work and kind of balance the home work. So that was a challenge to come through with her identity, and looking at expectations versus her wants, because she wanted to explore the world and really get out there on her own without settling down right away. Another problem during this time or challenge was her connection with her family. So while being away at school gave her a strong sense of independence, there was also a disconnect between her and her parents at this time, as well as her connection with her younger sister. Her sister is 4 years younger, so she was about 10 while my interviewee went away for boarding school for high school. Some of the accomplishments during this time, again, leading to her identity, connect with her sense of independence, being able to take care of herself and not rely on others to get what she wants or what she needs. High sense of self-worth, as she felt good with her education and who she was during this time frame, and really enjoyed her adolescence and growth. And all of that led to a strong sense of confidence that has carried her through to her present day situation. So it was a bumpy road at points, but all in all, it was a very successful stage of her life, and she feels that it really led her to a developed sense of long-term identity. So to recap onto that, with the stage 5 of the psychosocial development and crisis, the adolescent development was roughly between the ages of 11 to 21, which really set the stage for her future identity. She had many positive experiences with her family and peers, which led her to a stronger sense of identity and what it means to be a woman. This really connects into one of the articles that I read for the annotated bibliography, where Barnes wrote, "A Girl Amongst Men, a sociological analysis of my identity formation and the creation of my personal feminine ideal." With that, because of her experience of the women-centric educational environment, it really drove home a sense of what it means to be female for her. And this is very relatable to the article that I read, as the author of that struggled with her identity sense growing up in a male-dominated environment, and it wasn't until she was able to go to school and meet other women who had different senses of what it means to be female that she could connect with, that really helped her grow as a person and shape her own identity. Also on that, connecting into another one of my readings, focusing on negative experience versus positive experience with family and peers. So my interviewee feels that while there were some negative aspects with her relationship with her parents, specifically her strong sense of independence from an early age, and again, seeing her parents argue, leading her to, when it comes to marriage, really finding the right person to marry. All in all, she had what she perceives as a very positive relationship with her parents. They were very supportive of her and her choices and her education. They really went above and beyond to make sure that she had a positive all-around experience through early childhood development, leading into her adolescence, and then heading into adulthood. As she got older, her connection with her parents got stronger, and this helped her with her identification of how she wanted to parent down the line. So as part of the resolution to her psychosocial crisis of this time, as I mentioned, her adolescent years were between years of 1956 to 1967. So during this time, there was a large transition that was taking place in American culture of women's positions, and what they were expected to do out of life. There was a lot of racial uprising going through, with different civil rights movements pushing as well with that. and then leading into Vietnam, heading up into the stages of that. So those were all outside influences that were taking place around her. During this time, she grew up in a upper middle class environment. Her family had lived in a home in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and ended up moving to a larger house in the mountains with lots of woods, and it was a little more isolated. This move came into play because it was, as she quoted, the social thing to do, to hang out with the specific social circles that her parents interacted with at their social clubs and gatherings with that. There was not much racial diversity within the area that she grew up. It was pretty non existent. It was a very Caucasian area with most of the neighboring individuals falling into the upper middle class realm as well. But there was a strong sense of neighborhood and connection, and a bond between all the members within the community. She said that she was very close with the kids who grew up in the same area. They would all hang out, interact with each other. It was almost it takes a village to raise a child mentality. Everyone was looking out for each other and kind of had each other's backs with that. As for religion, it was part of her life. She was brought up in a Christian environment. However, it was not the focal point of her upbringing. It is mostly used as a way to help steer moral judgment, what's right and wrong, but not necessarily the full guiding point of the family's activities. Some other key points to the psychosocial crisis resolution. And there was the assassination of JFK in 1963. So this was an outside influence that gave a shaken sense of security. If something like this could happen to the President of the United States, then what did that mean for national security and just well-being all around? So my interviewee really remembers this as a pinnacle point of really realizing the world around her, and kind of took her out of her norm and security of where she grew up in a small town and her isolated reference point of her safe interactions, if you will. Again, this gave her a strong sense of what it means to be female during this time, which was a key point of her identity. Attending women's high school and college, surrounded her by strong women, so she had many options to choose from, if you will, of just role models and different aspects of femininity, and could see that there were many angles to it. There wasn't just a box definition of what it means to be a woman or what it means to be female. Women were getting married and having children right after graduation, which was kind of the cultural norm at this point. But this was also a point in time where women were stepping out of that role or putting it off a little bit. So there was a gradual turn to women not getting married directly out of college, even though it was still the norm. She had positive identity leading to positive behavior. So because she had a full sense of self, it pushed her in a line to continue in a positive notion and not get involved with heavy drinking, and stayed away from drug abuse. And after graduating from college, she moved to the city. So this was a whole new experience for her, where she gained just living in a more culturally and socially diverse population, which would then add to her previous existent knowledge of what it was to be an American, a woman, and really take on different viewpoints and learn from other people around her. Taking a wider lens look at Erikson's psychosocial development, my interviewee hit her early stages, 1 through 3, without complications, and reached all milestones within. through her acknowledgement and the narrative research process, she hit trust, autonomy, and initiative. So that was a strong play into her adolescence, also hitting into industry as well. So those were all key points. It was not her choice to go to boarding school, but it was the thing to do in her area, and it was just the socially acceptable aspect. All of her friends from her early childhood went away to boarding school as well, and she never felt that her parents were getting rid of her. Though some of her peers in high school felt that their parents pushed them away to school to get them out of the house, my interviewee always felt that it was for the best for her education to go to a pristine boarding school. Her sisters shared the same experience, also going to the same boarding school, even though there was a 4-year difference in age, so they never actually attended the school at the same time. And my interviewee made it through the stages with a full sense of identity, but not necessarily knowing a career path. So she held multiple jobs through her late 30s, eventually getting married at the age of 37, having her first child at 38, her second child at the age of 40, and then eventually started to stay at home to take care of the children. The other theory of development that I chose to focus on is Bandura's social learning theory. A big focus of this is modeling behaviors that one sees around them. So to connect that into my interviewee's life, it was normal for kids to go away for school and for camp, so it was just mirrored behavior of her peers to follow in that footstep and go to school or be gone for the entire summer through camp. She was surrounded by academics and educated peers, so again, doing well in school was partially a mirrored reflection of what she saw around her. So as her peers were doing well, she wanted to keep up with them and do well in school and not fall behind and be different from the rest of her peers. And she was also able to gain a strong connection to friends that were a positive influence, and they would mirror each other's behavior in terms of, again, academic excellence, staying out of trouble, not getting involved in drugs, and staying on a clean path. And she engaged in activities like other adolescents in her social circle all around. So that was very compared to what she was seeing in her immediate vicinity. And by doing well, she would earn praise from her parents and also from the educators at her institutions. So this encouraged the continued behavior of doing well. This also provided her additional opportunities for extra activities, like horseback riding, which she really enjoyed. So this is what others were doing at this time. It was the positive reinforcement for her mirrored behavior of her peers. Bandura's theory does have some limitations to it. Well, it might not be a full limitation, it's just a very broad viewpoint on life and learning leading to identity, as it can be applied to a general observation of all of Erikson's stages of life. Also, the viewer determines what is a positive or negative behavior to mirror. Well, society has an influence on what is right and what is wrong, and individuals' biopsychosocial experience will change their view. So if someone grows in an environment where there's lots of positive behavior to mirror and they witness a lot of punishment towards negative behavior, then they can properly reflect on what is considered for that society as positive or negative. Or the flip side, if someone's growing up in an environment where there is a lot of negative behavior with little to no punishment for it, it may be a gray line between what truly is a positive behavior versus a negative behavior to mirror. Using, again, my interview as an example, marriage after college as a mirror, she would have gotten married, as her friends did, right out of school, and started families, where my interviewee waited until she was in her late 30s to get married and start having children and creating a family. This concludes my presentation. Here's my list of references used to complete my annotated bibliographies and additional research on stage 5 of identity versus identity confusion. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.